Bob Huggins, who we love, Huggy Bear, he thinks that major conferences in basketball should ditch the NCAA tournament and make their own event. Now, this is the reason why this has some sort of gravitas is because football is very close in some people's minds to being sort of like this, where the power conferences, effectively the SEC plus, break away and they say, screw your system, we're going to do whatever we want. Here's the quote from Bob. He says, we have no power because we don't generate the same kind of TV income that football does, and we don't try, which is an interesting point of view because Bob has never coached at a football school. You know what I'm saying? Like he's coached at UC.
West Virginia?
West Virginia, okay. I mean, you know, they have a relevant program once a decade and they turn out a pro every 5-6 years. That's not a diss. That's just, you know, what it is.
Facts.
But like I think this is a bad idea. You know what I mean? Like I don't agree with I'd rather keep March Madness and ditch the NCAA than I would some new tournament and keep the NCAA.
You can't separate those two though.
One day we will. One day a kid can dream. Okay. Anyway, but I'm saying like, you know, the 64 team tournament, you know, 64 is the best thing going for college basketball. These days, the days of like folks tuning in big time for Big Monday and all this other stuff, those are over. You know what I mean? There's just too much content out there for that kind of thing to matter. And I don't think this is a good idea, Izzy.
Let me ask you this, Monica. And there's a couple of things about Huggins' quote there that confused me, where he says, we don't get the same type of TV money as NFL or football, and we don't even try. Their only money-making TV event is the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And they try, and it does make money. I mean, people stay home from work for that thing on a Thursday at noon. And then he says, you know, these other Cinderella schools put in 200 people. We bring in, you know, 14,000 or so. We're not talking about attendance at the tournaments being the big moneymaker. We're talking about the TV deal.
Yeah.
So unless Bob Huggins is suggesting that throughout the season they need bigger events for TV, which I would agree with, that would be the difference maker. Those don't seem to line up because, again, they're due plenty of work on TV in that deal. What they signed it through in 2016, the NCAA signed an 8-year, $8.8 billion TV deal. That's just for that tournament. So where it's confusing to me is like you can pump up the NCAA tournament a little bit more by making the first and second round matchups, you know, big time matchups. But are you really making that big of a difference? And to sort of alienate the rest of the NCAA, that doesn't make sense. If you can somehow create more of a regular season intrigue and make those TV dollars somehow more important, then yeah, I'm all in.
Here's my thing on this. Huggins, obviously, great coach, long career. But just as we literally have tried to think some of this through, I think this sounds nice in his head, but there's no path to executing it in a realistically and sustainable way, right? I also think the reality of it is the NCAA tournament is the cash cow for college basketball, and there's no separating that. The idea that these schools could do that apart from the NCAA, I do think on the one hand, this is partly inspired by some of the NIL stuff that we're seeing with the student athletes, which are sparking new conversations about independence from the powerful behemoth that the NCAA is. But the reality is there's no structure for college basketball without the NCAA in the way that college football could do it because it's a small crop of big-time money-making schools.
Right.
And if you really dig into the numbers, we mentioned West Virginia, even for some of our favorite and most powerful basketball programs outside of Duke, they are also backed by a football program.
Correct. That's very true. I mean, I'm not going to say Huggins doesn't know what he's talking about, but this idea seems half-baked, sort of at best. You know what I mean, in terms of execution. Alabaster King, what's up?
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Probably.
I would.
So how many times, honest, how many times have you watched any of these classic Cinderella finishes from start to finish? How many times were you lucky enough to get those games from the beginning versus just watching the end when they cut to it?
I was at the game when the blue school.
That almost doesn't count if you were there.
Sorry. But when they beat Michigan State, who's the blue school? Like Middle Tennessee. When they beat Michigan State, I was there. And then there's
Shouts to Middle Tennessee, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there when
you're right,
Weber
though.
State beat North Carolina too, but that doesn't really
It should
count. so I
count.
had
It
to
should
be there.
count, Izzy. It should count. We were present.
I'm talking about people who are watching it on TV. Those people are they catch the end of it. AKA, it's almost like those Apple alerts I get on my phone now for the NBA. Hey, there's a close game going on in Sacramento.
No, that's not true.
That's
actually,
when people tune in.
No, Izzy, that's not true. Because now that I think about my history and my university of Georgetown University, who was upset by both VCU, somebody else the next year, all types of Cinderellas. We had like a 3-year run where Cinderellas took us out all the time.
Yep.
I was watching as the bigger school. So I actually don't know if I agree with you on that take, because that was painful, and I remember.
But that's your team. Like, I'm saying, okay.
So like Kentucky brings their fan base, though.
Yeah, but we're talking about TV dollars with an NCAA tournament. Like, I'm talking about a fan sitting at home. If I'm taking the day off of work, I'm having to pray for a North Carolina A&T upset over such and such, versus if I'm taking this day off of work and I know I'm getting Duke, Kansas at noon on Thursday, I'm in. And if the finish is great. That's a double bonus. But like, we just kind of get lucky with these Cinderella situations by throwing all these teams together. And of course, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. But I don't see, as somebody going into the game, I'd rather see the great matchups and say, hey, maybe there's 1 out of 20 chance that this team's going to be able to upset the big team, or at least, get me a close.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the reason why it also doesn't work is because then you would lose the value of both. Everybody likes the upsets up until like the Elite Eight, and then you want the good teams so that you can get great games like we had in the Final Four last year. If you eliminate the Cinderellas and then you only have the teams that are any good, like I'm not really watching. I don't know. I'm not really watching the NCAA tournament because I'm like so concerned about who wins it. I just kind of want to see good basketball, and you already get both of those. And if you take away the sort of the beginning part and then you get the second part, and let's just say, I don't know, there's 5 teams that are good and the rest suck anyway, well then what's the point? You know what I mean? Like I think it's constructed well as it's done right now.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.